Good morning and welcome back, Trinidad, and a special good morning to Tobago. That's right. We touched base with Tobago this morning. Now, we've heard a lot about Hurricane Harvey, and dominating the news recently, we had Hurricane Irma, Jose, and Katia. While none of them have directly affected us here in Trinidad and Tobago, it's always good to get an idea of how we will be assisted if affected at any point in time. Mr. Allan Stewart of the Tobago Emergency Management Authority, TEMA, is now joining us to talk about relief efforts. Good morning, Mr. Stewart. How are you this morning?
I am doing well, thank you. It's a very beautiful morning. Allan Stewart from the Tobago Emergency Management Agency. And good morning to you.
And how is the weather like in Tobago this morning?
Well, we have been experiencing excellent weather over the past overnight. We had some rains yesterday, but no damage occurred as a result of such.
All right, so in the introduction, you would have heard that we'd like to know how we will be assisted if it is that we are affected at any point in time by, let's say, a major hurricane or even a tropical storm.
Well, one of the fundamental things about the region, I think we have made significant advancements in our regional mechanism. That works through CARICOM. CARICOM has set up what you call CDEMA. In 2009, it became CDEMA. It was known to us as CIDERA. And the 18 participating states comprised of Antigua, Barbuda, Bahamas, Barbados, Dominica, and all of these 18 states combined through CDEMA provide the necessary mechanism if one island is affected. So even at this time, we are rallying the cause to have persons respond to the needs of those who have been affected up the region. So that is how that mechanism works. It is coordinated by the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency. If Trinidad and Tobago, if Tobago, for example, is impacted to the extent whereby by what you may classify as a level 3 incident, that system automatically kicks in through the coordinating unit of CDEMA, and all the necessary arms of government will come together to provide assistance in the region. Apart from that, you also have other donor groups like USAID. You also have groups coming out of Canada. You also have UNDP. These are institutions. Regionally, we have CAFA. You also have a number of agencies, the International Telecommunications Union. They will provide the necessary assets that will come to bear in an emergency.
To help us to get a better understanding, a more practical idea of what CDEMA does, can you tell us the involvement or the role that CDEMA is currently playing with relief efforts to Antigua and Barbuda at this time?
CDEMA have put out what you call a call to the rest of the region through its coordinating unit. As it is presently, they are focusing on 4 major states, Anguilla, Barbuda, BVI, and Turks and Caicos. The situation reports can be achieved through, if one may visit www.cdema.org. It will give you those situational reports. They come out on a daily basis, and they outline the needs of the region, the needs of the affected countries, so that one who wish to donate or to bring relief, they will have a clinical idea exactly what are the needs of the affected countries.
All right. Now, with the passage of Tropical Storm Brett earlier this year, I remember that TEMA was heavily engaged in clearing up debris, a lot of cleanup operations, and it was just a tropical storm. Help us to understand the caliber, the effort that is required by TEMA and even CDEMA if it is we were to really experience a hurricane in Trinidad and Tobago.
One of the key reasons, it is said in disaster management that if you manage the emergency, you will not have a disaster on your hands. That may be true, but there's always the impact of the level of a hazard that can render you, or what we will consider to be catastrophic. And therefore, events like these will suggest that this is exactly what will happen. However, the mechanism through TEMA is well placed to manage throughout the various levels. So we have systems that allow us to manage through the efforts of the Tobago House of Assembly and all of the coordinating agencies that are on the ground here in Tobago to respond to what you call a level 1 incident. If it moves beyond the capacity of the Tobago House of Assembly, then it goes to a level 2, where the national assets coordinated through the ODPM will be made to bear on the event in Tobago. That was demonstrated in 2004, 2005, respectively. Also, if you have a situation like what occurred in 1963, Hurricane Flora, then the system speaks to international aid, where we have to allow for assistance to come in via that means. Now, it means that the local disaster office must be placed in a position where equipped that it can stay on top and coordinate these events effectively on behalf of the affected island. And therefore, Tobago is that place whereby we are able to continue to provide that level of support to and coordinating effort where command and control, coordination, and effective communication is made throughout the region. You know, only this morning, based on our capabilities, I was able to speak to our counterparts in Turks and Caicos, and that was done through simply Zello. So one of the tools I always encourage people to do is to download. Do yourself a favor as a citizen and download Zello so you'll be in the communication loop. But apart from that, the mechanism of communication and the array of communication assets are well placed to allow us to be able to communicate with our partners. Redundancy is the name of the game, and it means therefore that when conventional communication systems would have failed, the toolkit must be comprised of a number of assets that will allow us to know what is happening and to also to communicate our needs to the rest of the region. So that's the structure that we work with, and also from an executive level, the executive is advised to allow themselves to be reached so that communications, they could be able to express and have command and control over the situation that is at hand.
I'm glad that you brought up Hurricane Flora. I would like you to help us to understand how better equipped are we in terms of the relief response system that was put in place back then as opposed to where we are now. What are some of the improvements we've seen in terms of the response system?
It is vast. I recall back in 1963, I was able to privilege to look at some of the notes. Yeah, my hair doesn't represent my age quite well. But what happened is that back in those days, you had NERO, which was particularly speaking to response or relief. It was called the National Emergency Relief Organization. But disaster management over the years has grown. We have accepted UN standards in that CDEMA, again, have rise to the occasion where you will hear a lot being spoken of what is called comprehensive disaster management. It means, therefore, that you look at the entire phase or the phases of the disaster management. You look at what you do before, you look at what you do during, and even after. And therefore, in the phase basis, you're able to look at, in comprehensive disaster management, efforts to mitigate, efforts to prevent, preparedness, and the country have grown to the extent that, we consider ourselves to be abreast of any among the Caribbean or Caribbean partners with our levels of preparedness. So back then in the day, you had situations whereby it was more focused on relief, but now you're looking at being proactive by doing the necessaries, putting these mechanisms in place, having a coordinating unit that will allow for knowing exactly who needs to be called upon. Also, This preparedness speaks to training. It also speaks to tooling, ensuring that we have the necessary resources that will allow us to respond effectively. And those mechanisms are in place, and this is what is playing out in Irma. So I want to take the opportunity to engage the national population that we need to rise to the cause of providing emergency relief to our CARICOM neighbors, those that have been affected. There is a need list that has been established which will guide you. They are also locally here in Tobago, we have on location, we have been mandated by the Tobago House of Assembly to do coordination of the picking up of items for those persons who are affected and who wish to make contribution to the relief effort. We ask the population out there to really come to the aid of those persons who are affected across the Caribbean. In Tobago, there is 2 points of collection that are coordinated by TEMA. One is at the Tobago Emergency Operations Center at Fairfield Complex. The auditorium is awaiting you so that you can bring your contribution. Don't for a moment think that what you may have is insignificant. The emergency list or the needs list are out there. For those of you, I will repeat that. It's at www.cdema.org. That is CDEMA.org. Go and visit it so you can make appeal. We are making this appeal as well to ensure that people don't bring things that are used. For example, clothing. If you have clothing that are used, it don't belong to the emergency relief effort. So these are some of the appeal.
Mr. Stewart, thank you so much for being part of our program today. It was indeed a pleasure chatting with you, of course, providing us with some very, very critical information on how we can be assisted if we are in fact affected at any point in time by a natural disaster, specifically a hurricane or tropical storm.